You're listening to Childcare Sights and Sounds, presented by Danny Christine Inc., a podcast made for childcare providers by childcare providers. Welcome back, everyone, to Childcare Sights and Sounds. Today, Gigi is not with me. I'm so sorry to say it. I know that she is the light of the show, but I have a special guest joining us, Anisha Angella. Anisha Angella is a childcare specialist and consultant in the field of early childhood. Anisha is also a self-published children's book author. Her book is set to premiere this fall 2020. Anisha Angella is a childcare specialist in the field of early childhood, and she is also a self-published children's book author. So I'm so excited to speak to her and to learn more about her history within childcare and her future, really. I'm excited about the fact that she is writing this book. I've checked out her YouTube channel where she kind of did a little teaser about the book, and I'll leave that linked down below, either in the notes of this podcast and the description of the YouTube video version of this podcast. Wherever you can find a description, all her links will be below. So let's jump into the interview with Anisha. Thank you so much, Anisha, for coming on the Childcare Sights and Sounds podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so grateful for you making some time to be on this show. We really appreciate it. Usually I host this show with my best friend and co-host Gigi, but she couldn't be here today.
Oh, it's okay.
But hopefully we can have you back in the future.
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah, of course.
So for those of you who might not know, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your experience within the childcare industry?
Of course. So, like you said, my name is Anisha Angella. I'm a childcare consultant, but my 9-to-5 world, I'm a senior area director for a multi-facility childcare center in Canada. I oversee 45 locations around the Ontario locations area. And I oversee directors, area directors, and also the employees within the location. So that's kind of my main bulk of my 9-to-5 time.
Yeah.
I also teach at a few colleges around the GTA in Toronto, some early childhood programs. But yeah, a lot of that came to a halt once COVID hit. But yeah, that's mainly a little bit about me. I'm also a children's book author as well.
Right. Wow. So you do so much. Can you tell us like how you kind of climbed that ladder into administration?
Question.
At such a high level, overseeing 45 centers, that's a lot.
Thank you. I just, to be honest, I just went for it. I started out as, an educator. I decided that I kind of hit the roof on that role, and I had always had a love for the business side of childcare. So that's when I got into be an assistant director. I ran a location, and then shortly after, I kind of branched out into other areas, which brought me to my senior area director position as well. So yeah, it was just trying different things, and I think, like I mentioned, a big part of it was just the love for the business side of childcare, and that's what led me to trying out this role.
So how long were you a teacher before you transitioned?
Good question. So I wasn't a teacher for very long. I was a teacher for about 4 to 5 years. 4 to 5 years. Okay. I worked in infant, toddler, preschool, some kindergarten programming as well. And then I led some classrooms. So I was the lead teacher, and that's when I realized I had a passion for obviously working with people and also leading. That's where I kind of decided that that's the next turn I wanted to take. So that's when I jumped into the leading and the training part of administration.
Right. That sounds so similar to kind of my path. I always thought that I wanted to be a teacher. And I think I mentioned this in the first episode of this podcast that, like, in my kindergarten yearbook, it says, I want to be a teacher when I grow up. And I taught in a preschool for about the same amount of time as you did, about 4 years. And then after that 4 years, I decided that I wanted to open my own program because I did get more interested in the business side of things. So that's really interesting that we
Right.
have that
In common, yeah.
yeah, that in common. So do you love what you do within
I do.
is it all that you expected?
You know what? Every job, and you could probably relate to this, every job in management, there are a lot of rocky times, but I really do enjoy my role mainly because I get to come at a level where I'm also working with other leaders. So what you notice is when you start working with leaders, what you teach them and how you train them and how you encourage them to inspire others, that trickles down to their staff. So I find that that's the most enjoyable part, and that's what makes me feel like the hard times aren't so bad.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I know you mentioned that you are also an author. Can you tell us more about that? What inspired you to become an author?
I think my main thing is, even while working in the classroom, I've always had a fascination for children's books. I was that teacher that was always rearranging the book center, the book area, adding literacy in every area. And I always collected children's books and stuff like that as well. Then I figured, why don't I start writing them? It's I like to write. I don't really consider myself a writer yet. I just have kind of fun with it. But I enjoy writing, and I decided to take a stab at it and started looking into the self-publishing area, and decided to go ahead with my first book, which is called Zoe Has an Allergy, and it will be premiering in fall, and it's about a little one that discovers allergies, and just she's teaching the audience, which is the readers, on how to keep her safe and others safe with their allergies. So I personally I'm anaphylactic as well, so that kind of speaks to me on different levels too. So but yeah, that's a little bit about it. Decided to just go for it.
Okay. I do want to make a little note. You said you don't consider yourself a writer yet. And I have to tell you that if you're writing a book, if you're an author, you're a writer. And
I'm
you
a
need
writer,
to
I
own
know.
it. I think that many of us have a hard time just accepting accepting who we are and being proud of it, and just I don't know about you, but for me, I sometimes worry that, like, oh, I can't say I'm this because other people might not see me that way yet. They might think that
so
I
true.
need to reach a certain milestone or something like that.
It's true. It's
like
true.
For me, I can compare it to my label that I have on myself as a childcare business consultant. For a while, I haven't been really calling myself that or saying, like, yeah, I'm a consultant. And until very recently, just stepping into that role and like, this is what I am. Hundreds of people are turning to me for advice and for consults. So you're true. Over here writing books. You're an author.
All right. You've encouraged me. I'm a writer.
Yes. So you mentioned that your book is about a child that has an allergy, and you yourself also has an allergy. So are you like writing, is it like a biography? Is it about your childhood?
A little bit, yeah. So Zoe, which is the character I created, she's basically me. She's basically me. You'll find without giving too much away, even her parents are they kind of look like my parents. So basically her story is basically my story and how I discovered my allergies. So yeah, it is basically like a biography, but except in a little form of a little girl named Zoe.
Did you also illustrate?
No. So my illustrator's name is Rachel. She's actually from the Philippines. Super cool.
Oh, nice.
And she's my illustrator, and she is amazing. Like, she nailed my vision. I can't wait till it's actually done into my hands, but she nailed my vision.
Nice. And for everybody, so I don't know if you're aware, but we're recording the audio right now. That's going to get released first. And then a week after, the video version of this podcast will be released. So if you're okay with it, I'll definitely put the cover of your book in the video. So
Of
for
course.
anybody that's listening,
Yeah.
check out the video next week so you can see the cover art for Anisha's book.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that.
So one of the things that I had noticed while I was kind of stalking you on social media on your YouTube page, what is your YouTube channel? Would you like to let everybody know?
Sure. Yeah. So it's just Anisha Angella. Most of my stuff is all Anisha Angella.
Okay, so I'll definitely link it in the show notes and also in the description of the YouTube video replay of this podcast. But I noticed that you are a childcare coach.
I am. Yes.
Okay.
So that's the part of working with the leaders.
Right. Can you tell us more about what kind of services you provide and how anybody listening that is in the childcare world could benefit from what you offer?
Excellent. So one of the main things I'm working on is webinars and learning outcomes and courses relating to from curriculum to becoming a leader in the field, many topics that I'm working on. So that's my main project. I offer coaching sessions in terms of just chats with leaders to bounce ideas off of. I do have goal setting. So in terms of any leaders that are in the field and they want to bring their business to another level, we can do some goal setting and also audits. So I do offer personalized audits for anybody that's looking to, create some goals. I can develop an audit based upon their goals, and then depending on where their comfortability is, I can come in and perform that audit. So that's a little bit of what I'm doing. I think I'm also navigating what other aspects I should add to it, because the coach part is actually pretty new for me to add on. So yeah, that's a little bit about it.
Okay. How do you balance doing that with your 9 to 5? And it kind of seems like in the role that you mentioned that you are, that is what you do for the company, right?
It's basically mixed in.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I do have a lot of freedom within my 9 to 5. I have working days. I have stuff like that as well, where I'm able to kind of mix and balance, my own personal coaching and specialist section versus my 9 to 5. So that helps a lot. I work on the weekends. So Saturdays are keen times to do like my webinars and my courses and stuff like that I offer. But yeah, that's basically how I manage it, is between the free time I have with my 9 to 5 and then also weekends as well, while getting some time in for myself, of course.
That's always important. I wish I could relate. I'm not there yet. I'm still trying to figure out balance for myself.
It's ongoing. The process of figuring out balance is on. I'm still learning. Like it's a thing. It's definitely a thing that'll take some time.
Yeah. So with your 45 centers that you're overseeing, can you tell us about how, and I don't think we mentioned this, we talked briefly before the start of the recording, but Anisha's in Toronto.
Yes, I am, all the way in Toronto.
I do have subscribers and listeners and webinar attendees from around the world, but most of us are here in the US. So with you being in Toronto, I'm sure that everybody listening and watching would love to know how Toronto has responded to the coronavirus pandemic.
Oh man,
as it relates to childcare.
As it relates to childcare, yeah. So it's been quite the battle. We have been shut down since officially, I believe it was March, that we shut down our centers, and that means completely shut down, just like everyone else. The only difference between the States and in Toronto is we're actually just going to be opening Friday. So they just released the information at the beginning of this week that we are now allowed to open centers. So we're like 10 steps behind everyone else. So we're just kind of getting the guidelines now on what it should look like. what the sanitizing should look like, what care looks like, basically. I think we were all kind of now in the shock of a lot of the guidelines that our public health down here had shared with us in terms of what care should look like from a distance with children. And a lot of us are still in shock because in childcare, there's no such thing as distance. There's no such thing as distance. There's no such thing as telling children about social distancing. So I think we're all just trying to understand what childcare that's going to look like right now, now after COVID. But we are just getting ready to open our centers and start now.
Right. Well, you're not that far behind. I know for New York City, at least, they just started the phases of reopening last week within the 5 boroughs of New York City. And there are some states still that even have programs that are still mandated to be closed. Did the company make a voluntary choice to close, or did Toronto shut down all childcare programs?
Oh, the whole province, so Ontario completely. So on the grander scale of Toronto, meaning the province or our state, shut down completely, all centers.
There was no emergency childcare centers open?
There was, yes, but that actually happened more recently. So emergency childcare didn't come up until I would say a month or two in our shutdown, which was something different because I know a lot of that happened everywhere else. But we did have a few emergency childcare within the company that I work for. We only had about 3 or 4 that were open. So we did have those aspects, but with us opening now on Friday, it's a lot different than the emergency childcare centers that are open. So there's even more guidelines put on it.
Right. And are you running year round, or do you usually take breaks for the summer?
Year round. We're year round.
Okay. So with that said, do you have any quick advice for childcare providers that are preparing to go back to work this summer? I know many are scared, many are worried, especially if their programs have been closed.
I would definitely tell them, take it one step at a time. Take it one step at a time. There's going to be a lot of information that's going to be thrown at you, but definitely take it one step at a time in terms of what needs to happen. Consult with your team. Make sure your team is with you every step of the way in terms of the new guidelines or whatever guidelines that your government gives you to open. Make sure your team is with you. And I would say, in my best opinion, depending on how the openings look like here, for instance, they said that we could open on Friday, but it's up to the childcare centers to choose when they actually want to open. And I'm finding a lot of childcare centers are looking at training their staff, retraining their staff, and getting them acquainted with the new rules prior to opening. And I find that that's really important because your team has to be confident and ready before they get ready for this new vision of what childcare is going to look like. So I would say that would be my biggest advice: is take it a step at a time, and also work with your staff and get them ready before you open your doors.
Right. Speaking of advice for childcare programs, I realized that when you were speaking about your allergy, I forgot to ask. I had a question in mind about do you have any best practice suggestions for childcare programs surrounding monitoring allergies or just allergy awareness in general when it comes to children?
Yes, I do actually. I would say in early childhood, that's the time that parents are first finding out about a child's allergy. So it's a scary time for them. It could be possibly scary for us too, because depending on how severe it is, like for myself, I'm anaphylactic. So I have an EpiPen and stuff like that as well. So I would say the best advice I can give is ensure that your staff is ready for the child that they're accepting or the child that they already have, and prepare them for what foods they may have an allergic reaction to. Ensure to have maybe a sit down. That's one thing I really do advocate for all of my directors to do, is to make sure that they have that sit down with the family, and come up with a supportive plan for how to keep the child protected on site. And I'm not really sure the difference between in Canada, like in Canada, we do postings. I don't know if that's something that you guys do in the States as well, but we do postings. Yeah, so we have something where every child that has an allergy, there's a posting with their picture on it, and it describes what their allergy is, and that's put in every classroom. So having those updated quite often too.
Right. I know that there are some centers that do that. We do it in my program. We don't put the child's picture, but we do have the child's allergies up on the wall with a sheet of paper on top of it, so that let's say a parent or a visitor was to walk in the room, wouldn't be able to just turn and see Billy is allergic to broccoli, just for privacy reasons. So if anybody's listening that's trying to figure out ways that they can, kind of support their teachers in monitoring allergies, that might be something that you consider. And, that's important, right? Because what about substitutes who might not have had that sit down conversation with families? I do really like the picture idea, for that reason, because some substitutes might not even know the children's names. That's a great idea.
Right. That's one of the main things. But yeah, just having that time to consult with the family, consult with the teachers, training the teachers specifically to how to use an EpiPen, to make sure that the EpiPen is always on you at all times, and all of those aspects too. So yeah, that would be my advice for them. Yes.
Right. And I think that's something that many programs might overlook sometimes. I don't know if this is a thing in Toronto or honestly any other state except New York, but there's something called medication administration training, MAT training, that many programs can choose to. It's not mandatory in New York State to be a MAT certified program, but if you do choose to go that route, you can accept children who need specific medications that are prescribed or that can be or over the counter, like liquid meds. You can't do that. You can't take in those children or offer those medications if you are not MAT certified, but you can accept children that have inhalers, nebulizers, and EpiPens. That is the regulation as of today. I will say that if you're listening to this podcast in the future, that maybe check with regulations and licensing and all of that, just as a little disclaimer. But as of today, as of what I know, without MAT training, you can take in children that have EpiPens, nebulizers, and inhalers and administer those as emergency medications. But the point I'm getting at is that a lot of programs might not take the time to actually figure out how those emergency medications actually work, because they just can't even fathom that an emergency would arise, you know?
Right.
And that's it's a scary thought, but something that I always do is think about those scary thoughts, especially as the owner of the program that is liable for all these babies,
Right, 100%.
So taking those trainings, even if you're not required, because maybe your licensing doesn't require that sort of medication certification, taking those trainings is still necessary. And I remember I did that with my staff. We had a registered nurse come in and give us like sample EpiPens and show us how they work and everything and how to administer them. So that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. For me, because I'm anaphylactic, of course, I'm a little bit biased. So when I go to my locations, I'm always asking, where's their EpiPen? Where's their EpiPen? But yeah, it's always important to keep to keep them on their toes in terms of whether it's training or anything of that sort, because an emergency can happen within a second. And if you don't have the proper tools to be ready for that emergency, it can mean life or death. So,
Right.
educators and staff and owners should be thinking about that for sure.
Right. Have you experienced any allergic reaction or any sort of emergency?
No, knock on wood. Not
Yes.
yet. Not yet.
And
Not with
hopefully
a child
never.
or myself. Personally, I've never had to actually use an EpiPen for myself or on other children, but of course, trained and certified for it just in case.
Of course. And how did you discover that? I know you said that allergies are usually discovered early on and, at the age that the children are when they're in our programs. So how did you discover that you had this allergy?
Well, I was one of those really, really rare cases. I didn't discover my allergy until I was about 11. So I went, it's not that I didn't discover, but it didn't develop until I was about 11. So I went through my whole life, eating peanuts, tree nuts, which are what my allergy is. And I think I went through a period where I didn't really eat it as much. I didn't really want it. And then one day I had a brownie and my lip just got swollen. My tongue was swollen. And that's when I discovered that my allergy was to tree nuts at that time. So I was a bit older, which is a blessing in disguise, because when you're older, you're able to kind of control it a bit better. Whereas with little ones, that's where the scare is that's the age that they want to share food. They're putting food in their mouths. They're doing all those things. So it's up to educators and adults to protect them. Whereas I was a little bit older, so I was able to speak for myself.
Wow. Yeah, that's a blessing.
Mm.
Okay, Anisha. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners about yourself, your services, your book? Do you have a date that you can give us?
I do. I don't have an exact date, but
what are you waiting for?
Only because, you know what, with COVID, it's COVID. I'm going to blame it on COVID.
Okay.
It has pushed my whole project
Yeah.
so much longer than it has to be, but it will be in the fall, only because with printing is in the air in terms of that. So that's where I'm at right now. So the illustrations are done, everything's together. It's just waiting for the physical copies to be in my hand. But I kind of pushed the date to the fall because I know I will have it by fall. So definitely.
Okay. Yeah. Just blame everything on COVID.
Oh yes, that's what I've been doing.
I think we can all do that. COVID kind of stole the whole year from us.
Right, exactly.
But the fall is a good time. It's back to school. It's a children's book. Is it more so like educational for to teach children about allergies?
Yes, definitely. That's what it is. It's mainly, it's in the perspective of Zoe sharing her experience and also listing some ways that she is advising how to keep others safe, or if the child has an allergy that's reading, how to keep themselves safe, and using language that they'll understand. There are other allergy books out there, but I know from what I've seen, a lot of them shy from anaphylaxis and anaphylactic allergies because the EpiPen is not something fun to share about, right? So I decided to tackle that and talk about how important it is to keep it on you, and what it's for, and all of that stuff as well. So it's a teaching tool for sure.
Yeah, and that's absolutely important. So I'm surprised to hear you say that, because it would be important for a child that is able to pay attention and remember a book and a story, if they have an allergy, to know that this is what I need to have on me, in case the adult that is responsible for watching them forgets, the child might remember, the child 100%. Will know, so that is an important concept. Can you tell us where the listeners will be able to find your book to buy it?
Yeah, so they can definitely find it on www.anishaangelabooks.ca. So it will be sold right on my website. Or if they follow me on Instagram, Books by Anisha Angella, Books by _Anisha Angella, they'll be able to find lots of updates on my book as well.
Are you shipping to the US?
Yes, I am. All over the world. All over the world.
Great. Well, I can't wait for until you release it, because I'll be signing up to buy my copy and copies from my center as well.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Anisha. It was great talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Anyone interested in following can go to Instagram, books_by_Anisha Angella, right?
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again, Anisha, and I hope to have you back soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.